Vinsmoke Sanji. You know this guy. We all know this guy. This perverted world-class chef isn't just a guy who cooks behind the stove. He also cooks your favorite Yonko commander. And in today's video, let's talk about exactly that. What's up guys, Gamblrr here, and in today's video, we're finally back on the Sanji agenda. It's been a minute, I know, but I had to come back and show y'all who the real GOAT is. If you enjoyed this video, which I know you do, you're watching my videos, right? Go ahead and subscribe. If you regret it, you can always unsubscribe later. Alright. Every time I do in every video, I always start the video off with an analysis on the character's strength. And it's been a minute since I've done this, so let's talk about everything Sanji has. Starting off with strength, our boy is pretty strong. Even before his numerous power-ups, which we'll go into in a second, Sanji is still able to damage the likes of Queen, who is regarded and stated himself to be the third toughest on the Beast Pirates behind of course the Oni and the Lunarian. Despite this statement, Sanji is able to consistently damage him, but there's also an underlying problem in all of this. In chapter 10:28, we see Sanji hit Queen with a named attack, to which it of course damages Queen, but despite this fact, he gets up immediately and Sanji himself complains about Queen's durability. The fact is, Sanji doesn't have the AP to do lasting damage to Queen, let alone have the AP to take down the Calamity altogether. This same thing will continue happening with Sanji repeatedly hitting Queen, to which Queen would cry out in pain, but instantly recover because the attacks aren't heavy enough to put a stop to him. This is until chapter 10:31. In this chapter, we see a new Sanji. His eyebrows are flipped and he's going through a mental breakdown because he might have just harmed a woman, something he vowed he would never do. Once he comes to the conclusion that it was the raid suit that did this to him, he destroys it, makes a promise to Zoro, and finally locks in on Queen. Right after this, he perception blitzes him, which we'll talk about in a second, and then he hits him with Hell's Memories. This attack was actually very effective, and despite Queen's quick recovery from it again, we found out that he was just continuing the durability gimmick. What I want to put emphasis on though is the fact that this was Sanji with his eyebrows switched. In that mode, Sanji's attacks have more weight because on top of the heat from his kicks, he has an exoskeleton. This is consistent because after this, every single kick Sanji lands on Queen deals way more damage than it did before, having him drop into his knees and all sorts of stuff. This is cool and all, but Sanji wanted to take it up a notch and he created Ifrit Jambe. With his exoskeleton and armament haki, Sanji is now able to withstand hotter flames, and so with that, he's able to produce blue flames to not only increase his speed and whatnot, but his attack power as well. With a couple of kicks and a named attack, Sanji put Queen on his ass, kicking him off the entire island. Before we continue, I've seen people try to say that this is 9 named attacks. What? Come on bro, don't be silly. Sanji's AP feats don't stop there though, because we enter Egghead Island and he's able to box with a Seraphim, which in itself isn't that much of a feat, but he was cooking S-Shark, and while I won't sit here and act like he damaged him with his flames on, he was at the very least stunning him. Luckily we have a better feat in Sanji kicking a Kizaru laser out of existence. People argue about whether or not this is Ifrit Jambe, and to be honest, I really couldn't care less if it was. This is still a great feat and Kizaru's reaction was priceless. Sanji goes on to spam Ifrit Jambe, using it whenever he wants to, and at the time of this recording, he just used it in base without his eyebrows. This is a testament to his haki because, as I described earlier, Sanji's Ifrit Jambe is a combination of his firepower, exoskeleton, and haki. This means that his haki has improved so much that he can withstand blue flames without the exoskeleton. This might be foreshadowing to a new power-up though, who knows. Moving on to speed, this is Sanji's most crazy stat, and Oda continuously tells us why this is. Before his awakening, Queen literally could not touch Sanji. Sanji was putting the works on Queen while Queen had to just sit there and take it. Anyways, this was the case for almost 10 chapters until chapter 10:23. This is the chapter where Sanji's movements become so weird that Zoro himself has to ask what's up with him. In response, Sanji tells him that he's been feeling weird since he last put on the raid suit. Sanji's movements were holding him back so much that he actually starts clashing and getting caught by Queen directly. No, this wasn't a testament to Queen speed. As Sanji's on the floor, he says that his movements are definitely weird, but he recovers and blisses Queen right after. This is cool and all, but let's get into the crazy stuff. In chapter 10:31, Sanji is what we like to call awakened. and with this new power, Sanji himself states that he gains super speed from it. The first thing he does with it, in base by the way, is disappear from Queen's perception. He does this not once, but twice. Oda was really trying to convey a message here. I put emphasis on the fact that Sanji was in base because in each Jambi he gets faster. This is stated multiple times and shown to us directly. I wanted to bring this up because for some reason people think that Sanji increasing his speed with the Jambes is a mistranslation.
I'm just cold. 40 something millies of the soul I've been told. What is that?
If this scene from Eni's lobby was the only piece of evidence we had, I would have taken it seriously, but then we get Sanji saying the exact same thing when he uses it for Jambe. Another thing I want to mention is the fact that Perception Blitz in Queen is actually impressive, no matter what these people tell you. Let me break down my thought process when I gas this feat because I don't think I've ever done that before. The gas from this feat comes from what Queen himself is able to perceive. During his fight with Marco enters his hybrid form, which should be his fastest form, and Queen is easily able to perceive him while being attacked, even though he does still get blitzed. This is Queen in base, and Queen in hybrid form is able to use the Lightspeed Blade Henry Queen. The name speaks for itself, to be honest. Anyways, this would imply that Queen's strongest form, hybrid, is at the very least able to perceive even more than his base. And guess what Sanji does to him twice in a row? Outspeed his perception. One contention could be made about the manner of Sanji and Marco's blitz, but there was no difference. First off, Sanji didn't have a reason to try and perception blitz Queen the first time. He was just fast enough to do it. That logic can only work for the second blitz where he wanted to match what Queen was doing with pure speed. In fact, we literally see the nature of Sanji's blitz. He didn't pull up behind him to attack, he deliberately kicks him in front of him. Sanji does this in his awakened base form, and he only gets faster with Diabo Jambe and Ifrit Jambe. Next is durability, and that's another stat that Sanji increases drastically after his awakening. Before his awakening, Sanji's durability wasn't anything too crazy. He was getting cooked by Black Maria, but of course, that's because he wasn't using any haki to protect himself. But then after he awakens, he's automatically able to tank an off guard slice to the neck, breaking the sword in the process. Being off guard is a huge thing in One Piece. It's why Oden and Luffy died to Kaido. When you're off guard, you don't have the proper defenses up to go against an attack. Despite this fact, Sanji stands there and breaks a sword on his neck. He then goes on to do more things like tank bullets and endure Queen's onslaught, but my favorite thing to talk about with Awakened Sanji is his feat against S-Shark. S-Shark is stated to be a user of Fishman Karate, something Jinbei himself says and demonstrates is durability negation. Despite this fact, Sanji stands in front of a Fishman Karate punch and takes 0 damage. This is proof that Sanji has a slight level of resistance to durability negation, but who knows, maybe it depends on the power level of the attacker. Finally, we have to talk about his hacks. OG vs Gamblrr watchers know that I never go in depth with this part unless needed, and in regards to Sanji, his hacks are pretty self-explanatory. He has armament haki, observation haki, the ability to fly, an exoskeleton that boosts his durability, speed, and strength. He also has his different Jambes, Diabo Jambe and Ifrit Jambe, to boost his speed and strength as well. Sanji also has a type of regeneration. He's able to heal all of his bones from being broken almost instantly by just hitting them back in place. This of course is exclusive to his awakened state, however. But with all that said, I've gone over Sanji's abilities, and now it's time to find out if Sanji can hold a candle to the likes of the Yonko commanders. I'll list out all the Yonko crews, rank them, and go according to that. The Yonkos consist of Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, Luffy, Blackbeard, and Buggy. Now, I ranked them by how much I wanted to talk about the crew, not by strength, because that's a little too much work to think about. Also, Shanks, well, you'll see at the end of the video. With all that being said, let's go into the first Yonko crew, the Beast Pirates. We just fought against these guys, so I think it was the most logical to go into first for this video. The Beast Pirates, very luckily, is a meritocracy, which means that the ranks are defined by skill and strength. Essentially, the Beast Pirates hierarchy looks exactly like this. We've got the fodder, and then we have the Flying Six, who are stronger than the fodder but weaker than the All-Stars, and the All-Stars are the strongest behind Kaido, the King of Beasts. With that said, we have 3 All-Stars who represent the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in command, King, Queen, and Jack. So let's go into Jack first. Jack is a very funny guy. He was the first character with a billion bounty we ever saw in the story, and so because of that, everyone thought dude was a mega monster. He is, don't get me wrong, but when Wano started, things just didn't look good for him. First off, Jack has a grand total of 0 AP fees, and literally all he does is get his ass beat and get up. When Cat Viper and Dogstorm jumped him in their Sulong form, they literally incapacitated him, and after getting up again, he got defeated by one of them. Cat Viper and Dogstorm are equals, and while Jack was getting cooked by one of them, the other defeated Parasparrow. Now, this isn't to say that Jack and Parasparrow are equals in any sense of the word, but the matchups all make up one conclusion: Sanji victim. Sanji was already boxing with Parasparrow tier characters before the raid, and then he went through multiple power-ups to defeat a character stronger than Jack. It's not close, put a W on the board. Speaking of a character stronger than Jack, we have Queen. Sanji cooked this guy, and obviously he'd do it again with less difficulty, but how exactly is that? Like I established earlier, Sanji had no trouble hitting Queen and avoiding his attacks, even before his awakening. The problem he ran into was his lack of AP, which he made up for tenfold in just Diablo Jambe while awakened. Each attack he landed on Queen while his eyebrows were flipped devastated him. And don't even get me started on it for Jambe. A new fight against Queen would just be Sanji blitzing him multiple times over, landing a ton of kicks on him without Queen ever being able to hit him back, and eventually just damaging him to the point where he can't go on. 2-0 for Sanji. Next on the pecking order is King, the last Lunarian. I've been waiting to get to this because this was a video I made actually a while back. Now, before I go into whatever I said over there, I want to preface this by saying that King is that guy. He has speed, he has AP to a certain extent, and he has durability. That was he has most of all, but his endurance? Holy crap. Zoro unlocked Advanced Conqueror's Haki, hit Queen 3 times, and he fell asleep. This was of course in his flames off mode, but Zoro even goes on to imply he can damage him even with his flames on. I'm not gonna sit here and act like Sanji can do the same, but I don't see a reason why Sanji wouldn't be able to do it with his flames off. And that's the entire premise of Sanji vs King. Can Sanji damage King with his flames off? Yes or no? If it's yes, then we have to go over speed, but if not, Sanji can't damage him and King would just outlast him. With that being said, going into speed, the main thing I brought up was the fact that King and Queen's observation haki, and by extension their perception, was relatively ass because they both couldn't sense Sanji while he was invisible. Sanji also clashed with flames off King before any of his power-ups, so there isn't a world where King is just faster than Sanji. Heck, Zoro himself has reacted to flames off King multiple times in situations where Sanji would just go invisible. With all this being said, Sanji can damage King and he can also outspeed him, so Sanji logically should be able to put the Lunarian down for good, just like he did to Queen. Put a W on the board. Now that we're finished with the Beast Pirates, it's time to go into the second Yonko crew taken down during Wano, the Big Mom Pirates. The Big Mom Pirates have 3 Yonko commanders: Snack, Cracker, and Smoothie. So without further ado, let's start with Snack. Snack was one of the 3 sweet generals, but he lost his spot off screen, but we know the reason why. Sometime during the time skip, Rouge, one of the Supernova, entered Big Mom's territory unsolicited, and so came people trying to stop his pursuit. The first to pull up on him was Snack, and he seemed to have a good fight with Rouge, but he ended up falling to him. So Snack just blatantly skills below a mid time skip Rouge, which makes him easy work for someone like Sanji. We barely have any scaling on Rouge, but the fact that this was during the time skip, so it's likely he didn't even have Haki, makes this all the more pathetic. Plus, Luffy in Whole Cake Island goes on to be an even stronger opponent, and our current Sanji at the very least scales above this Luffy through his feats against an even stronger enemy. TLDR, Rouge isn't that guy and he still managed to take down Snack, so Sanji, who is that guy, would do the same with less effort. That's 4-0. Next is Cracker, the strongest commander that Luffy went against. Now, this isn't as easy as just saying Sanji is stronger than Whole Cake Island Luffy, because Cracker's abilities are actually insane. One of Cracker's armors was pushing Luffy to gear 4. This doesn't mean that they're gear 4 level, of course, because as soon as he entered it, he was one-shotting each of them. The fact is, you need at least gear 4 levels of AP to one-shot his army, and you need speed to not only one-shot the enemies, but get to the actual Cracker. Luckily, our guy has both of those criteria fulfilled with flying colors. Luffy clips his gear 4 beginning of Whole Cake Island self multiple times over by the time he reaches the rooftop. By the Wano arc, after having a long grueling fight, he comes out stronger because of not only the island boost but his Haki bloom. He gets one shot by Kaido and isn't able to damage him at all, then by the rooftop he's able to outperform himself in base. This is relevant because Luffy was fighting a Tobiropo and matching with another Tobiropo before his rooftop debut, and Sanji defeated a character stronger than both by a significant margin. Sanji can not only one-shot all of Cracker's soldiers, but also in base without awakening. Queen can't touch him, and Sanji's easily tagging him. So Cracker, who scales below Queen, would easily get blitzed by Sanji without any power-ups. Mind you, Cracker himself states that he creates armies because he himself cannot endure pain. One base kick from Sanji might just one-shot him. That's 5-0. Next we have Smoothie, and this one's as bad as Snack because what the hell does she even do? We know of like 2 attacks from her, and off the top of my head they were her base Devil Fruit attack, which is drying out people, and her second attack, which is just using the power from dragging out people as projectiles. These are the only things she does, and the only thing going for her for real is the fact that she ranks above Crackers, so she should be stronger than him. With all that Yap said, Smoothie still cooks Sanji because she's a woman, so put an L on the board for Sanji. The Blackbeard Pirates are up next, and this might be the most annoying one here. For this crew, the 3 commanders I'd be down to go over is Burgess, Shiryu, and Aokiji. And so starting with Burgess, this is a complete slaughter. Burgess' most prominent fight was against Sabo, in which he got absolutely embarrassed. His dumbass didn't even use Haki against his Devil Fruit ability and got mollywopped off screen, then knocked out by 1 Fire Fist. Sanji does the same with 0 difficulties, and his new Devil Fruit abilities do nothing to change it. Put a W on the board. Next we have Shiryu, and this one is also super laughable. Shiryu was actually introduced as an equal to a guy you probably forgot about, Magellan. Magellan is some bum that pre-time skipped Luffy while super fatigued dropped to his knees. That doesn't matter however, because we entered the time skip and he comes out with a Devil Fruit, the one that turns him invisible. Now first of all, before we even go into how their stacks work against each other, you have to establish some things. 1. If your observation Haki is good enough, you can sense him, like Garp did in Hachinosu. 2. Sanji literally knows everything to know about the fruit he has and has been shown to just flat out counter it back in Thriller Bark. And 3, which is kind of just 1 in another font, Sanji can sense Shiryu. We saw him do it with Queen. With that being said, Shiryu got almost one-shotted by a slam into the ground by a weakened Garp with 0 Haki. Sanji might unironically kick his face off. He also doesn't have the luxury of catching Sanji off guard because Sanji can sense him and turn invisible himself. From there, Sanji would just hit him with a couple kicks and Shiryu was out of the game. 6-1. The final commander to go over is Aokiji, and we finally have an actual fighter. Sadly, Sanji just can't box this guy. Aokiji is not only boxes with Garp, but he was equals with Akainu to the point where they fought for 10 days. For reference, Luffy fought for half a day and unlocked Future Sight, and power clipped himself multiple times over. Then on the rooftop, he Haki bloomed multiple times, unlocking Conqueror's Coding and then getting it to the point where he could split the sky. 10 days of fighting and with extreme relativity is no joke. The levels they breached were probably monstrous. With that being said, that alone puts him above Sanji, with Sanji's only saving grace being his speed, which Aokiji doesn't have to worry about because he's an endurance monster. He'd also just be able to freeze Sanji on impact and finish him off with his monstrous physical capabilities. Put an L on the board. Next is the crew you guys have all been waiting for, the Straw Hat crew. Of course, Sanji himself is a commander on there, so I'm not about to do Sanji versus Sanji, so instead, we'll just do Jinbei and Zoro. Obviously, we're not about to put Frankie against Sanji. Frankie cooks him. Jinbei versus Sanji is a fight I went over in a video as well, and this, for some reason, is unironically talked about. I used to think it was satire from Zoro fans, but there are actually people who think that Jinbei can beat Sanji. So let's get into it. Jinbei's best stat is his strength, and it at his max was able to push back Big Mom. Yes, this is the feat that allows Jinbei to box with Sanji according to people. Pushing a fat character back. No, not damaging her, and no, we don't talk about her weighing less than usual. The fact is, he pushed her. That's all we need. Alright. Jinbei's actual best feat is his punch on Who's Who, which showcases Fishman Karate. He demolished him, and I don't expect anything less from our Shark Boy, but that's where the fun ends because, for one, I've already established that Sanji has resistance to Duraneg, and more specifically, Fishman Karate. Jinbei also couldn't blitz a character who's weaker than the character Sanji Perception Blitz. The icing on the cake is Jinbei's durability. The guy got cut through his armament. He got cut through his armament hockey. Sanji perception blitzes and one-shots him. Enough said. 7-2. Next up is the swordsman of the Straw Hat crew, Zoro. This is a matchup. The hell was that? This was a matchup. Why isn't this? Alright, you know what? Let's just move on. The second to last crew on the list is Whitebeard's crew, and this is a special one because we can actually pinpoint 4 commanders. If you didn't know, Whitebeard's crew isn't set up like the others. What's actually the case is that the powerhouses don't really go by the ship numbers. The powerhouses in question are Vista, Jozu, and Marco. However, I said 4 because we can add Ace, another powerhouse, into the equation. So with that, let's get into Vista. Alright, from the moment I call out the names of the commanders I was referring to, you probably noticed something. These guys got nothing outside of some off-screen altercations. Vista boxed with Mihawk for a little bit during the war, and people try to use this against Mihawk, but I think it's just a sign of respect. I mean, we've seen Mihawk one-shot people he wanted to one-shot, play around with people he wanted to play around with, so what's to say he can't just give Vista a good duel? What supports this is the fact that Mihawk literally knew who he was. Why would he go out the way to one-shot a swordsman he actually knows? Regardless of all this, the only other thing dude has is a combo attack with Marco not getting outpaced by him, so we can say on occasion he can match Marco's speed. Sadly, Marco's speed isn't too impressive when it comes to Sanji as we went over earlier, so Vista just gets cooked. 8-2. Next is Jozu, and this is another case of just not knowing enough. What needs to be said is that Sanji may not be able to break through his diamond armor very easily because it's diamond, but I don't doubt that in Infrajanbe he can combo through it. With that being said, the only things of note we have from Jozu is him damaging Aokiji off guard, and that's it. Sanji can't be hit by Jozu under any circumstances because he's just faster than him. And with what I said earlier, I think it's safe to assume Sanji just takes the win over the unbreakable man. Put a W on the board. Ace is up next, and this is such a funny thing to go over because this might actually be an even worse mismatch than Shiryu versus Sanji. Ace's power is fire and Sanji's power is fire, but Sanji is the one with actual resistance to fire. It's the reason he's able to use it for Janbe, and at this point actually spam it whenever he feels fit. Ace's fire would never damage Sanji because he's endured hotter and more powerful flames. Ace on the other hand was getting his ass handed to him by Blackbeard's base physical attacks. This isn't to say that Ace is weak or fodder, no, but the fact of the matter is, Sanji completely counters him in everything he does. Sanji probably cooks him with it for Janbe. 10-2. The final Whitebeard commander to go over is Marco, and this is another matchup I went over on my channel before. Marco is an endurer. He doesn't have AP, he has endurance and hacks to sustain him. The thing is, when he gets cooked beyond his ability to heal and recover, he cannot keep up. The only thing that Sanji, a character who's faster than him in his awakened form without any fire, has to do is either riddle him with attacks too heavy for him to handle or beat the crap out of him until he can't heal anymore. Either is plausible as we saw Marco's limit being reached, and from then Sanji would finish the fight super easily. 11-2. The final crew to go into is Buggy's crew, and they have 2 commanders of note, Crocodile and Mihawk. Crocodile got cooked by pre-time skip Luffy, got out of jail and was clashing with Mihawk and Dofi. And then we got a time skip and we're currently at a point where we really don't know how strong he is. His bounty is super high, but I don't really want to get into the habit of using bounties as a power scale. With that being said, assuming we just use the Marineford version of him, the strongest version of him that we see fighting, Sanji absolutely demolishes him. Sanji versus Dofi isn't close, and so by extension, Sanji versus Crocodile wouldn't be either. 12-2. Mihawk is literally the Yonko of Buggy's crew. He rivals Shanks in the current day, and Zoro, Sanji's own rival, still admits inferiority to him. Enough said. Now, you may be wondering, what about the red hairs? And to that, I would ask you, why are you even worrying about that? I was complaining about Vista and Jozu, but at least we've seen them do something. We've literally seen one thing from any red-haired commander, and it's Yasa blowing up a ship. I'm not going over that. At the end of the video, Sanji ends up with a score of 12-3. His losses include a girl who he can't fight properly and 2 Yonko level combatants. He dominates everyone else with his overwhelming speed and strength though. But what did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. And I'll catch y'all in the next one.